Derby Day is upon us again, and will a generation of Ipswich Town fans finally see the club overcome bitter rivals Norwich City? Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Harvey Bell. Delighted to be with you over the next few minutes or so as we look ahead to the East Anglian Derby on Sunday. As ever, if you do enjoy the video, please do subscribe down below and leave in the comments what you think the score is going to be. We're going to talk all things Ipswich versus Norwich in just a moment, but first we're just going to go over Ipswich Town versus Bristol City from midweek, because I have seen some of the reaction on Twitter. I understand the frustrations. Maybe this is a game on paper that we should have been winning, but ultimately I think it's a very, very solid point away at a good Bristol City side. Obviously, very frustrating to concede in the manner that we did from a corner. It's a couple of times that we've done that this season now, and something that I'm sure McKenna and Mark Hudson, the set-piece coach, will be trying to tighten up. It is frustrating when you concede in that nature, because ultimately there wasn't really a lot in the game. Luckily, did get back on terms for a Jack Clark penalty. I thought the penalty was very soft. I thought Akpom probably dived a little bit, but I'm not complaining by any means, and I was very pleased to see us get the penalty and get back on terms. Bristol City as well are in good form. They've had a really good start to the season under their new manager, Gerard Struber. Probably a really difficult time to play them just because their confidence is high. They've still got the new manager bounce, for a lack of a better term. So I think to come away with a point really isn't the worst result in the world. And then looking at Town's form as well, obviously with the Sheffield United and Portsmouth wins and then the point at Bristol City, that's 7 points from 9, and I can't really argue with that. So overall, quite a good result, I think. Yes, it maybe halts momentum a little bit from the 2 wins in a row, but ultimately I think come the end of the season we'll look back on it as a solid point away from home. One positive from the game I thought was Leif Davis. I thought he was terrific, flying up the left-hand flank as he sort of has done for the last few seasons. You can really see that his confidence is starting to come back. Put in a fizzing ball in the second half as well that just nobody could get on the end of. And then as well, there was a second time where he put the ball in. I don't really know if it was a shot or a cross, but it sort of deflected off the post. And I just start to see that we're getting a little bit of Leif Davis back. There are a lot of changes to the starting 11 as well, 6 in total. Marcelino NUNEZ and Ivan Azon both came in for their full debuts in an Ipswich Town shirt. Mixed reaction to both of them, but again, it's their first full 90 minutes. Azon particularly coming in from abroad is going to take a little bit of time to settle, but I thought he battled well. I thought he worked hard, but just didn't really quite have the effect on the game that he would have hoped for. NUNEZ, again, neat and tidy in most places. You can see that he's got a good pass on him. You can see that he's always thinking forward, a very, very positive player. Obviously, we'll talk about him a lot more over the next few minutes, but NUNEZ in general, I thought had a solid enough game, bar for a couple of wayward passes. But again, still just finding his feet, as is Azon and a couple of the other players that came in, like Akpom, who hasn't played many games for us at the minute. But in any case, you know, I'm happy to take the point and move on to Sunday. Okay, let's just get it out the way then, because I know it's going to be spoken about a lot by the opposition fans. It's been 16 years, we know. April 2009, the last time that Ipswich Town beat Norwich City. Giovanni Dos Santos, John Stead and Alan Quinn, the goal scorers on that day. Some good Ipswich Town trivia for you there, if anybody ever asks you. 3-2 win at Portman Road, and I don't think anybody inside that ground that day, obviously I wasn't there because I was only 4 years old, but I don't think anybody else in that ground that day would be thinking to themselves that 16 years later, we wouldn't have beaten them since. So it's a little bit frustrating, and I've been going for 15 years now as a season ticket holder, and I've still never seen us beat Norwich. So that's really frustrating, and I'm hoping we can change that around. But as much as 16 years sounds particularly bad, I do want to point out one thing here. Looking back at sort of the head-to-head meetings, I did work out that we've actually played Norwich only in half of those seasons. So I don't really think it's as bad as it sounds. You have to remember as well, there are times where we really should have won against Norwich. I think back to Luke Chambers at Carrow Road, last-minute header before Tim Closer equalised. We really thought that we had done it then. Very frustrating not to have done. Then I think back to the game at Portman Road, the last time that we played them at home. Nathan Broadhead got us on terms, 1-0 up, and arguably we should have gone into half-time 4 or 5-0 up, but just didn't capitalise on a really good start and let them back into the game and found ourselves looking for an equaliser through Wes Burns. So Again, disappointing. Should have beaten them there and then, and we wouldn't be sat here now talking about 16 years. But that is the nature of the game sometimes. And look, we could talk about history all day, but ultimately we've got to try and have a look at how the two teams are performing now and preview ahead to this Sunday, because history is not going to win this game. But before we do that, it's time for... Guess Blue. It's the time of the video where I give you 3 words and you tell me in the comments which former Ipswich Town player I am describing. So your 3 words today are Scottish, hat-trick and radio. Jump in the comment section, tell me who the player is I'm talking about. Norwich City then, and taking off my blue tinted glasses here, they haven't had the best of start to the season, and they haven't had the best start to life under Liam Manning either, especially at Carrow Road. I mean, I'm filming this before they play West Brom, so this might have changed by the time that this video goes out, but currently 4 games at home and 4 losses. You know, that's very, very frustrating for the new manager. I'm sure he'll be as frustrated as anybody else because he's generally considered a good coach at this level. Done a very good job with Bristol City, got them into the playoffs. And I think people expected that this would be a very steady appointment for Norwich. And it hasn't gone that way. Their fans are a little bit frustrated. Talk of maybe, you know, looking elsewhere already. Very early murmurs of that. Liam Manning, of course, with connections to Ipswich. And yeah, it's not going to plan for him so far. A lot can be said for their home form, but credit to them. They've been fairly decent on the road. They won at Portsmouth. They won at Blackburn. Of course, Town haven't played there yet. But they do seem to be better on the road than they are at home. And of course, they're on the road this Sunday at Portman Road. I don't know how much of a difference that actually makes confidence-wise, if that will give them a boost coming to Portman Road, knowing that they have won away this season. But ultimately, for the lack of a better term, and sorry to be a bit cliche, form does generally tend to go out the window on these occasions. The Canaries' main threat is, of course, Josh Sargent, the USA international striker. And I'm just going to talk about him for 30 seconds or so, just on the basis that when they were in the Premier League last and they signed him, he did not hit the ground running at all, and he was poor for his first couple of seasons, sort of in Norfolk. But credit where credit is due. I've got to say, Sargent has completely turned round his fortunes at Norwich, and he's become probably one of the best 3 strikers in the Championship. You know, he scores regularly, and he has done for a couple of seasons now. And fair play for a player that looked like he was never going to settle and looked like he may be headed for the exit door, has really turned around his fortunes, endeared himself to the fans, and, you know, generally looks like a really, really formidable Championship player who I'm sure Dara O'Shea and Jacob Greaves or Cedric Kipri, whoever it might be, will have to keep a real keen eye on come Sunday. Sopic in midfield as well is a player to look out for, a very combative, ball-winning midfielder. You know, he's going to get stuck into the tackle. Players like him are the ones that are going to be up for this occasion. Jeffrey Schlupp as well, a very experienced left back. You know, could make a big difference, that cool and calm head. And then Pelle Madsen in midfield as well is a good Danish player coming in the summer. Replacement for Marcelino NUNEZ, who we're going to talk about in a minute. But Norwich do actually have a number of good players, as they usually tend to do. I always think that about Norwich, to be honest with you. I always think that Norwich always look like they're going to struggle, look like they're going to have a bad season, but they always seem to have 3 or 4 players that can get them out of a hole, and that seems to be the difficult thing that Kieran McKenna will have to overcome this Sunday. What I will say about Norwich, though, is they seem to be stuck at the moment, and what I mean by that is for a number of years they went up to the Premier League, came down, and they seem to be stuck in that cycle. But it's been a few years since they were in the Premier League now, and they seem to now be gradually going into that mid-table Championship team where perhaps maybe the ownership is lacking a little bit of motivation. I don't think they'll be at any risk of going down, but it doesn't look like they're going to be amongst the chasing pack to try and get back into the Premier League. And I think they just seem a little bit stuck, and I think that's why there is probably growing frustration from the fan base. I liken it very much to how Ipswich were probably under Mick McCarthy, where Mick McCarthy was doing a fairly decent job, but because we weren't trying to get ourselves back into the Premier League and merely just keeping our heads above the water, there was that sort of frustration. And I sort of see a little bit of that in Norwich now. Players like Borja Sainz and Marcelino NUNEZ are looking elsewhere to really kick on with their careers. So I do just think that there is that underlying current sort of at Norwich at the minute where things aren't quite as content as they maybe have been over the last sort of decade or so. That's not to say, though, that they're not a very threatening team, because I think they are. And I don't think that Sunday is going to be a walkover by any means. Well, we have to talk about him. He was on the thumbnail for the video, and he is all the talk ahead of Sunday. Marcelino NUNEZ, of course, joined Ipswich in the summer for £10 million. And it's not very often you see a player cross the Suffolk-Norfolk border. And NUNEZ has completely lapped it up, hasn't he? He came out at Portman Road, sort of waving the scarf around, and he's not hiding his love or passion for Ipswich Town. And as an Ipswich Town fan, that's really, really good to see. To be fair, I don't think there's much point in him trying to hide his love for Ipswich now. He's definitely burnt his bridges with the Norwich fans, so he may as well go hell and leather at it at becoming an Ipswich Town legend. To be honest, I don't know if he's going to play much on Sunday. I think he'll probably contribute from the bench. Obviously, he played midweek against Bristol City, his first start. But I do think it will be Matasiwa and Jens Kajust. But it's a really, really interesting narrative, isn't it? And perhaps, dare I say, if he is to come off the bench, that gives him more chance towards the end of the game to maybe get himself on the score sheet against Tyre and Legs. But we'll wait and see. But of course, it is a really, really fascinating sort of undercurrent going into the game, is the whole Marcelino NUNEZ thing. I mean, I'm very, very excited to see how he does. I said already, against Bristol City, he maybe struggled just a tad, but I think once he gradually gets up to speed, and now maybe he's had 90 minutes in his legs, we might start to see the best of him. And that's very exciting going into the East Anglian Derby. I think I said when the transfer happened that I wouldn't want to be on the other side of it, and I probably wouldn't be sat here laughing if I was on the other side of it. I'd be very, very angry. But ultimately, as an Ipswich Town fan, this is a moment that I'm going to enjoy, and seeing him come on the pitch against his former club and our bitter rivals, Norwich, is going to be something that I'm sure the 30,000 inside Portman Road are going to enjoy. Speaking of all the changes midweek as well, I think that was very much with a view to Sunday's game rather than Sunday's occasion. And what I mean by that, I think whoever the opponent was, I think Kieran McKenna would have made wholesale changes. I think he would have generally tried to freshen things up ahead of the first Saturday, Tuesday of the season. I don't think it was necessarily just because it was Norwich. So I think he was just keeping the likes of George Hurst, Jens Kajust, Jayden Philogene as sort of fit and as ready as he possibly could. I do think a lot of those players will come back in on Sunday. I would be very surprised if on his current form, Jayden Philogene didn't start his game. Obviously 4 goals in his last 2 Portman Road appearances. George Hurst as well. He's scoring goals at the moment. There's a lot to be said about the rest of his form, but he is putting the ball in the back of the net, and I don't think you can argue with that too much. So I think he'll be back in. Jens Kajus, I'd be surprised if he wasn't back in. The interesting point for me is centre-back, because Cedric Kipri had a very good game against Portsmouth. I thought he came in and was tremendous on his debut. Jacob Greaves then returned from suspension and took his place right back at Bristol City. So I don't know whether that was with a view to Sunday and starting Kipri, giving Kipri some rest, or whether it was the fact that Jacob Greaves is coming back in to reconcile that partnership with Dara O'Shea. We'll have to wait and see till Sunday. But I was very surprised to see Greaves come back into the team, and I'll be very interested to see on Sunday who the centre-back is alongside Dara O'Shea, because of course our captain is going to start the game. I'll leave you with my score prediction as well, and I try and make this sort of as level-headed as I can, because of course I'm an Ipswich fan and I have passion. But if I strip away the derby, if I strip away all the added emotion to it, I look at the two teams' form. I see Ipswich's form is growing. I see Norwich's sort of stagnating. I see a home crowd that is going to be very, very up for this occasion, and maybe a Norwich fan base that is maybe not quite as connected to their players as maybe our fan base is. And even if I was a neutral, which of course in this situation I'm not, I wouldn't be able to predict anything other than an Ipswich Town win. So I am going to go for an Ipswich Town win. I'll be very interested to hear what you think down in the comments. Do let me know. Tell me how you're feeling ahead of the derby. I know some people absolutely hate it, just because it is a very, very tense occasion. Pretty much every time Norwich get the ball, I'll be sort of putting my hands over my face and starting to panic, just because that is the nature of these games. But ultimately, it's what we enjoy about football. So wherever you are on Sunday, if you're watching at Portman Road like I will be, or if you're watching in a pub, or you're watching at home, or you're watching anywhere, or you can't even bear to look at a TV screen to see the game because you're so nervous, do enjoy it, have fun, and other than that, thanks for watching and keep on keeping on.